When Hasselblad drops new gear, it always feels like a big event in the photography world. Recently, alongside the announcement of the X2DII camera, they unveiled a lens that's turning heads for good reason, the 35-100E. Rather than cramming everything into a single video, I wanted to sit down and dive into this lens on its own, because it truly deserves a closer look. And after spending some time with it, I can confidently say this is shaping up to be one of the most exciting additions to Hasselblad's lineup in years. For context, Hasselblad separates their lenses into different series, each representing a slightly different philosophy. The 5 series is all about versatility, the P series focuses on portability, and the series stands for exclusive. That last category is where Hasselblad places its absolute top-tier glass, representing the pinnacle of what they're capable of in terms of optical performance. Before this, the only other E-series lens was the 20-35 ultra-wide zoom, which came out earlier this year. That lens is phenomenal in its own right, but wide-angle photography isn't something I'll lean on every day. When you need it, it's essential, but it's not always practical for my shooting style. The 35-100E, though, is right in my sweet spot. What makes this lens so compelling is the range it covers. It's essentially a 3x zoom lens, stretching from 35mm to 100mm. On a medium format body, the equivalent field of view is about 27mm to 76mm in full frame terms. That makes it incredibly flexible. It reaches wide enough for street work and environmental portraits while stretching long enough for flattering portraiture. What's even more impressive is how Hasselblad has designed it to take full advantage of the system's crop modes. If you crop into the 35mm mode, the lens functions as an actual 35-100mm on that sensor size, giving you additional reach while still delivering files around 66 megapixels. That's a massive amount of detail and resolution, making it a truly practical tool for so many situations. Now, let's talk about size, because the elephant in the room is that this is not a tiny lens. We're dealing with medium format here, and a zoom that covers this much ground was never going to be discreet. But appearances can be deceiving. Pick it up, and you'll be surprised at just how lightweight it feels. At only 894 grams, it's far from burdensome, especially when paired with a body that balances so well in the hand. Even after carrying it around for hours, I never felt like it was too heavy. The only situation where size might be an issue is if you're trying to remain extremely discreet. For street shooting in crowded areas where you don't want to attract attention, the footprint of the lens may make that a little more challenging. But if discretion isn't your top concern, this lens covers such a wide range of focal lengths that it can easily replace a bag full of primes. I learned this lesson the hard way last year while traveling through Japan. On that trip, I carried the X2DII camera with me every day, and I quickly realized how much gear becomes a burden when you're walking long distances. I tried to narrow things down and found myself primarily using the 38 volts and 7.5p lenses, occasionally bringing out the 90 volts. The 7.5p ended up being my workhorse, mostly because it was close enough to portrait length while being significantly lighter. But even then, there were plenty of moments where I wished I had the flexibility of a zoom. With the 35-100E, that problem disappears. Instead of juggling multiple lenses and swapping them out while trying not to miss moments, I could easily carry this one lens and cover all the focal lengths I would reasonably need. Of course, prime lenses still have their advantages. They're generally faster, with brighter apertures, and that's something no zoom can fully replace. But the trade-off here is that you gain flexibility, convenience, and still get jaw-dropping image quality. In fact, Hasselblad has hinted that this 35-100E is the second entry in what they're calling the Holy Trinity of E-series lenses. That alone should tell you how serious they are about this line. Compared to Hasselblad's older zooms, this one feels like a leap forward. The previous 35-75 was heavier, noisier, and covered a shorter range. The new 35-100E manages to improve in every respect. It's lighter, smaller, quieter, and sharper, all while giving you more reach on the long end. That's no small feat. Optically, it's a variable aperture lens. At 35mm, you get a maximum aperture of f2.8, which is excellent for a zoom of this type. As you zoom out to 100mm, it narrows to f4. On paper, that might not seem groundbreaking, but medium format changes the equation. Depth of field behaves differently compared to 35mm full-frame systems, so even at f4, you still get beautiful subject separation and dreamy background fall-off. In real-world use, the bokeh is gorgeous, creamy, natural, and flattering for portraits. Sharpness, meanwhile, is exceptional. Even wide open at f2.8, the lens delivers edge-to-edge sharpness, which has historically been a weak point for zooms. Light transmission is what it is. f4 is f4, but Hasselblad's bodies give you an ace up your sleeve: stabilization. With a mind-blowing 10 stops of in-body image stabilization, and holding this lens in lower light is completely viable, so long as your subject isn't moving too quickly. That means you can shoot handheld in conditions that would normally demand a tripod or a faster lens, and still come away with sharp results. Another crucial point is autofocus. A fast, accurate autofocus system requires a combination of strong software, capable hardware in the body, and motors inside the lens itself. Hasselblad has clearly engineered all three to work beautifully together here. The 35-100E is among the fastest focusing lenses in their entire lineup. Combined with the X2DII camera's improved object recognition and tracking capabilities, it's a powerhouse system. In my testing, even when my subject's flowing dress swept across her body and partially blocked her face, the autofocus stayed locked onto the eye. That level of consistency is impressive, especially on a medium format system, which hasn't traditionally been known for autofocus speed. There's also the shutter to consider. Hasselblad uses leaf shutters built directly into their lenses. This has the massive advantage of allowing flash sync at any shutter speed up to 1/4000th of a second. That opens creative doors for using strobes in bright conditions or balancing flash with ambient light. But leaf shutters usually have a distinct sound. On older lenses, you'd hear that signature click audible enough that models and subjects would often time their movements based on the noise. With the 35-100E, that sound is nearly eliminated. It's so quiet that one of my subjects, a ballet dancer named Alexandra, actually commented during a shoot that she couldn't hear the shutter at all. That silence may not seem like a big deal, but in sensitive situations, documentary work, live performances, intimate portraits, it makes a world of difference. From a technical standpoint, the construction of this lens is thoroughly modern. It's built with 16 elements in 13 groups, including 3 aspherical and 5 extra low dispersion elements to keep chromatic aberrations and distortions in check. The filter thread is a large 86mm, which tells you right away this is a serious piece of glass. Minimum focusing distance is also solid, at 0.4 meters on the wide end and 0.5 meters on the long end. It won't replace a dedicated macro lens, but it gives you plenty of room to get close for detail shots. All of that technical talk is important, but what really matters is how the images look. And the results speak for themselves. At 35mm and f2.8, the sharpness is staggering. Traditionally, zooms wide open can be mushy at the edges, but not here. Detail remains crisp from corner to corner. At 100mm and f4, portraits come alive. The subject's eyes pop with razor sharpness while backgrounds melt into a creamy blur, thanks to the shallower depth of field medium format affords. Add in the autofocus tracking and stabilization, and suddenly you can attempt shots that would have been impossible on previous generations. For example, I experimented with motion blur during dance photography. By dragging the shutter and hand-holding the lens, I was able to capture tack-sharp faces with flowing, blurred fabric in the same frame. It's a striking look that combines precision with artistry. Stepping back, what excites me most about this lens is how it simplifies the question photographers often ask: if you could only choose one lens for the Hasselblad X system, which would it be? That's usually a hard question to answer, because preferences vary so widely. Some people live for wide-angle landscapes, others specialize in portraits, while others want something light and compact. But the 35-100E feels like the first lens that could genuinely be the one. It won't replace every prime, and it certainly isn't tiny, but it covers such a broad range with such high performance that it's hard to argue against it. If I had to pick just one lens to pair with the X2DII camera, this would be it. Yes, it's big. That's the only real compromise. But physics demand that it's simply not possible to build a medium format zoom like this without some heft. What Hasselblad has managed, though, is to reduce the weight to the point where carrying it all day isn't a problem, while still delivering world-class optics, lightning-fast autofocus, whisper-quiet shutter operation, and the flexibility to handle almost any shooting scenario. In the end, the Hasselblad 35-100E is more than just a new piece of glass. It's a statement of where the brand is heading. It's a lens that unlocks new possibilities for medium-format shooters, makes travel and on-location work far easier, and delivers image quality that matches the very best primes. For me, it's the lens I've been waiting for, and it will no doubt spend more time on my camera than anything else in my kit.